Most people actually spend more time planning a family vacation than they do planning for their retirement. Today is the day after Thanksgiving, and I wanted to do a couples retirement video for you guys, but I know that nobody wanted to talk about retirement planning on actual Valentine's Day. People don't want to talk about retirement planning at all, obviously. So today, it's the day after Valentine's Day. You're feeling good, you had a good dinner, and you ate some chocolate. So today, let's dig into 4 things that I want to talk about with you guys about how to sort of address retirement planning as a couple, and good conversations that this will start. And no matter how old you are, whether you're 20 or whether you're 60, these ideas will apply for either getting ready to plan for retirement or just getting into retirement. Let's get into it right now.
Shut up and sit down.
Just in case you're new here, this is the Retirement Mentality channel, a place where I want to change your mentality about retirement, how you think about retirement. It doesn't work the way that it used to. Now we talk a lot about creative passive income. We talk about doing that through real estate. I talk about some of my real estate investments I have. We talk a lot about my one in Puerto Rico. And just now we're getting more into some retirement strategy. So if those are interesting topics to you, you're in the right place, my friends. So let's just jump right in. The first thing I want to talk about is sort of, you have to understand the mindset that your spouse or your partner has about money. I did a whole other video about this. I'll put a link up here, and I called it bad advice that your parents get. But if one spouse grew up in a household where people just worried about money all the time, they never had any money, they're going to have different money goals than somebody who grew up in a family that, whether they had more money or not, didn't worry about money. Maybe they spent too much. Maybe they always were in debt, or maybe one person had a bunch of money and the other person didn't. These two things sort of ingrain our mindsets about money into our brains, and they have a big impact on how we want to save for retirement, how we want to invest for retirement. Do we want high risk, low risk? Do we want to make sure we never run out of money? Do we want to work till we're 75? Do we want to try to retire early at 50? Those things all play a big part. So just understanding the mindset that you have and that your spouse has about money and talking about that is going to be step one. So these things might seem obvious, but there's a lot of things, like maybe one person in a relationship, their parents paid for college and they expect to pay for a kid's college, and the other one's parents didn't pay for college and they just expect that the kid needs to pay for their own college, or maybe they don't even think they need to go to college, or that's just one example of things that you just might think that that's how everybody does it, and you didn't talk about it until someone like me comes along and gives you these great ideas of how to talk about these issues. So some points of conversation you could have here is just asking your spouse or partner, like, how did your parents handle money? How do you want to handle investment? What's our risk tolerance? And they say that one of the things married couples fight the most about, obviously, is money. So think back to some of the previous arguments, or I like to call them heated discussions you may have had about money, and think about where you keep butting heads, and just maybe jot those down and keep track in your mind. Don't keep a score tally of who's winning those arguments, but keep track in your mind of where you seem to butt heads and differ on money ideas, and sit down and talk about those at a time when everybody's happy, like the day after Thanksgiving, or the day after Valentine's Day, when you just had your fancy dinner and chocolate. The second thing that you need to do is create some sort of a retirement timeline. One thing that I think a lot of couples don't talk about is, at what age do they think they're going to retire? Some people want to retire at different ages, and most couples don't actually retire at the same time. And so you need to sort of set up the timeline of how long each person thinks they're going to last, how much money you think you're going to need, how long is it going to take to get that, and what are you going to do after you retire. Those things all are going to dictate how long that retirement timeline is. So by having some conversations around when you want to retire, how much money you think you need to have to retire, and what you want to do after you retire, can help you set up that timeline. I'm going to actually, I said in a previous video that I was going to make a retirement quiz for you guys to take, and I'm going to link to that in the bottom. I'm going to tell you how it works at the end of this video, so stay tuned to the end to learn about my retirement quiz. I'm going to link down there for free. You can just print it out. I'm not even going to ask you for an email address or anything, so just stay to the end and I'll tell you about my little quiz. So some questions that will fall into this part 2 of this video is, when do we want to retire? Maybe if you haven't had a lot of conversations about retirement, maybe you're coming in with 2 different retirement accounts. That each person has a 401k or an IRA, or things have been contributing that work, and maybe figuring out a way to put those 2 things together into one retirement plan moving forward. Because if you've both been planning separately and you both had different ideas of when you wanted to retire, there's a good time. Any time is a good time to figure out how to put those together to see how it all works. The third step of something that you need to talk about is how you're going to handle debt and investing. A lot of couples, maybe this isn't something that comes up, whether you're going to try to pay off the mortgage and be debt free, have no credit cards, have no car payments, or maybe the other spouse thinks that they're going to have the house paid off, but they want to have a Ferrari after they retire and they're willing to pay $3,200 a month for their Ferrari payment, and the other person might think that's ridiculous. So handling debt and investment risk is something that is its own topic. You know, if one person grew up with a scarcity mindset of money, they're going to have less risk tolerance than the person who maybe grew up with a higher risk, a less scarcity mindset of money. That's not the most perfect sentence, but you get the idea. So, high risk, low risk investing, no debt. Do we have debt? So some of the questions in this thing that you might ask each other are just that, like how much debt are we willing to go into retirement with, if any? And have we talked about a withdrawal strategy? If you've got a big savings or investment account set up, what's our withdrawal strategy going to be? How much of that are we going to take out of there each month? Are we going to do 3%, the 4% rule, 2%, 5%, you know, depending on how much of a nest egg you've got in the retirement accounts? You got to figure out what that withdrawal strategy is and see how long you think you need to sustain yourself. Some people might think you're going to live to 86, and some people might think you're going to live to 106. So you got to figure that into your plan as well. And the fourth step of what I see in sort of the planning, the couples retirement planning thing we're doing here today, is sort of figuring out how to live purposely so you can purposely plan for a good retirement. You know, there's a lot of things external forces that are trying to get your money's attention, and the people who spend first and save what's left over don't live as purposely as people who save first and spend what's left over. So I think the easiest way to do this is, I'm not a big believer in budgeting. I think budgets are just people's idea of how much they want to spend. I'm a believer in tracking your expenses. So if you start tracking your expenses and you see how much you're actually spending, you can calculate how much you have to spend. I mean, there's certain spending that just has to be done to survive. You got to pay the mortgage and the cars. You got to get groceries and pay insurance and da-da-da-da-da. So figure out how much you have to spend, and then see what's left over, and then figure out, of that chunk of money, how much do we want to actually invest and save or give away to charities or whatever you want to do. But being purposeful about that in the front, and then having your discretionary spending be what's left over for vacations or trips or fancy clothes like this shirt that I made up just for this channel. So those are discretionary items that have to come out of that money that's left over after the investing and the giving and whatever things you can prioritize. I saw an interesting article lately where they had people prioritize what was most important from the biggest items to the least important items. And a lot of people who had a lot of money prioritized fancy cars way down here, but yet they're all driving fancy cars. And after a lot of people looked at their own answers to this, they realized they should get more practical cars and spend the extra, like put that money back up here into these items that were like kids' college funds or retirement savings and things that they valued way up here, but they're spending a lot of money on things way down here like fancy cars. So prioritizing that, living a purposeful life so you can plan for a purposeful retirement is the key to all of this, and that's the best way to do it. I hope you got some value out of this. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by my birthday, which is coming up in April, so we got plenty of time. And I told you there is a link down below for a couple survey. It's got 20 questions on it, and the way that I envision this happening is each spouse, you can print it out, and each spouse can fill in the answers. It's pretty quick and pretty easy. A lot of them are yes or no answers. And then compare your answers on the two things and see where you might need to have some discussions, because maybe you've got some different answers there if there's things you've never talked about. And it's kind of meant to just kind of spark some ideas and get some conversation going in your own house. I appreciate any conversation in the comments below as well. And if you like this video, go watch this video over here. There'll be more about when couples retire at separate times. Thanks for watching.